do feel free to use the chat function. We're going to be having discussion between our panelists. We're going to be having Q&A a bit later on, and we will be looking at the chat to see the questions that you have that you'd like us to explore. So David, could you start the recording, please, and I'll introduce our panelists. So welcome to this digital discipleship webinar. My name's Emma Nash, and I'm the Mission and Community Engagement Officer in the Evangelism and Growth team. I'm delighted to have some other panellists with me here today. So we have Fola Oyeleye from the London Methodist District. He's the project coordinator for the district. We've also got Reverend Clive McKee, who's going to be joining us a bit later on to talk about take time meditations. We're hoping to have Ali Johnson with us. We know that he's been delayed with Methodist conference preparations, and we're hoping that he'll be able to join us a bit later on. So we're going to start our discussion, but just before, we'll say please do keep yourself muted because otherwise it creates problems with echo and so on. But do submit questions or comments via chat. We welcome you to do that. The views that you will hear are our own. We're not speaking on behalf of the Methodist Church. We're giving our own views today, and we do encourage debate. So if you don't agree with us, that's no problem. Do post your thoughts in chat. So, Fola, it's been interesting times that we've been living through. Many of us in the church, we've been used to discipleship being done in a certain way. We'd be used to sitting in church where scriptures are read, where sermons are sort of delivered to us, where we're led in prayer. But that's all completely changed, hasn't it? I mean, what have you noticed in terms of the changes that have had to take place?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Emma, for that brilliant introduction. In different contexts, some people have seen a higher participation in church meetings or courses. And so as an example, I will use Alpha Course, which is an introduction course to Christianity that is being pioneered by Holy Trinity in Brompton in London. And they've seen that participation for the Alpha Course has doubled. They also have like a 7-week marriage course where they would normally have about 80 to 100 couples attend this event. And now they've registered over 5,000 couples signing up for this online forum. And so for some churches, there's been an increase in terms of online participation in courses that they would normally provide in person. And so that's one of the trends that I've observed so far.
That's so interesting. So we have, I guess, tend to think about what we've lost. So I started by saying, you know, we can't meet in person. We can't hear sermons in person at the moment and attend services. But it sounds like, Fola, we've actually gained something through digital participation. Why do you think that might be? What any thoughts about why so many people have been signing up for Alpha and Marriage Course and so on?
It's an interesting question because when I read Nicky Gumbel's view, who is the pioneer of the program, he couldn't quite put his finger on exactly why. I think there's the comfort that people can dip in and out as and when they want. There's that flexibility that I'm in my own backyard, so to speak, and therefore I think that gives a lot more comfort to say, okay, there's that open forum to be able to feel comfortable. In some cases, the fact that in a forum like this, people have inserted their full names, and that in itself allows a bit of connection that, you can easily find people's names. So I could see so many names on this forum already. That in itself creates a connection, which if you were to go to a physical meeting, you've got to ask for people's names first before you get to know them. Whereas with the online forum, there's that instant connection, which is sometimes available through online participation. And so I think to some extent, the flexibility that is offered through the online participation, people being able to dip in and out, people being able to, not show their faces at all. I think that has sometimes added to the opportunities that has been presented online. And so for people that find it very intimidating being in large crowds, they at least have that opportunity to be able to do it from the comfort of their home. So that's some of the reasons that some people have given as to why, participation has increased in their local context.
Yeah, right. So being able to dip in and out, you mentioned you don't even need to show your face necessarily. You can still participate at different levels. There's a comment function as well, isn't there, in a lot of these technologies. In my own experience, I worship at a Baptist church that has been live streaming. They started out pre-recording content and then went to live stream on Facebook and YouTube. And the beauty of it is that I can sit and watch a sermon, but I can comment at the same time. And then using the technology, someone will put my comment up on the screen, and then the minister, we've got 2 ministers in my church, they'll talk about the sermon and they'll bring in people's comments. So it's a kind of an interaction that you wouldn't get in a more traditional kind of Sunday service. People don't generally pop up and say things and comment. Is that something that you've noticed, that in terms of using chat and interaction like that?
Most definitely. I think the ability to be able to say something during the service has added a lot more value. I mean, incidentally, Twitter in the past, they've also offered this feature, especially when you have conferences where people can tweet their thoughts, and the conference host, they can also post those thoughts on the screen. And so to some extent, this feature is not new. It's just a lot of our churches, we haven't really adopted that in the live atmosphere. But yes, you're right. Within the context of let's say you're watching a YouTube service, I think that feature that allows people to be able to interact whilst the service is going on, being able to comment, adds a bit more vibrancy to a pre-recorded event. And I've also done that. So for example, when we start our services, everybody's saying good morning, good morning, good morning. You know, it's always so good to be able to say, okay, where's everybody dialing in from? And so you have relatives that are not in the same proximity, but it gives them that opportunity to be able to access the same service at the same time. And so, yes, you're right. It's really nice to be able to have that feature, which we haven't really adopted in our live services as they go on. Yes.
Mm. So in a moment, Follow, you're going to talk with us a bit more about small groups in discipleship in this digital realm. But before we do, I've had people say to me, well, digital discipleship, it's not really proper discipleship because it's too easy. So, they've said, for example, sitting on the sofa with your coffee and your pajamas, participating in YouTube church, you're not taking up your cross and following Christ when you do that. I mean, how would you respond to that, Follow?
I like to think all of us are on a journey. Some of us are at the top of the hill. Some of us are at the bottom of the hill. And so it's always good to find the people at the top of the hill to be able to encourage the ones at the bottom of the hill not to give up. And so, yes, there's that flexibility for people to interact with service the way they want. But I think that's also an opportunity in some respects that, it gives people that sense of ownership, that they can do something, about their discipleship. So, yes, I mean, one of the things I'll be talking about at some stage is the pitfalls of, digital small groups. But yes, with every opportunity, there's always the pitfall. But, there's always that encouragement to allow people to be themselves in a way that allows them to eventually open up in a bigger remit later on. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, Follow, I know that you've been thinking particularly about small groups, so do please share some of your thoughts with us now. And as we said earlier, feel free, folks, to put questions for Follow or comments in the chat.
Thank you very much, Emma, and welcome again to everyone as well. I know people are commenting in the group chat. We'll do our best to try to comment on those as this session goes on. But just to introduce myself again, I work for the London District as a project coordinator for its Woven project, which looks at the power of storytelling to transform us in our discipleship. Outside of that, within my local church, I've been part of a small group for over 10 years. Within that 10-year period, over the last 4 years, I've been a leader as well as a facilitator of a small group. So personally speaking, being a leader or facilitators has helped me tremendously in my own personal discipleship in terms of understanding the role that I play in my Christian service, as well as supporting other people through their discipleship. Anecdotally, the move in our case from meeting physically to having our group meetings online has for us led to a higher participation. Although it's hard to put our finger on the exact drivers, but I suppose there are some things that is common to why in participation has sort of increased. I think there's the obvious one, which means a majority of households have broadband access. The lockdown of the pandemic has also meant that other competing activities that people would normally have got involved in are sort of reduced, and so therefore they have a bit more time to participate in this small group meetings. And also, there's the comfort that, participants can join from home. And then, so in some cases, we have people that are nursing mothers that they have to put their young children to bed at nighttime. And so for them, it's been an opportunity to be able to, be part of church life at the same time as interacting or doing whatever they would normally do, which has been otherwise would have been prevented if they've had to come to a physical meeting. So before identifying some of the opportunities, or shall I say the pitfall as well, that has come through digital small groups, it's worth mentioning some of the commendable attributes that having a small group offers over the large gatherings that they don't provide. So one of them is the fact that within a small group context, it allows for Christian community to exist beyond the Sunday service. Whenever we have feedback in my local church, my senior minister is quite quick to remind us to think of church not only as the meeting that happens on a Sunday morning, but also to think about church as something that happens outside of the Sunday morning. And so one of the quotes which I've heard being used again and again throughout this pandemic has been the fact that the church is not the building, it is the people. And I'm sure most of us that are on this call will probably have heard that particular phrase being used, that the church is not the building, that the church is the people that make up or that come together on a Sunday. And I would say that, small group makes this life of the church possible. The community life that happens through small groups becomes possible through a variety of activities, including WhatsApp groups, as well as Zoom handouts, just to name a few. Another aspect of a small group that is quite commendable is the fact that, peer-to-peer learning also takes place. One of the remarkable features of a small group meeting is the fact that everybody has an opportunity to contribute. So depending on how, the meeting is set up, or depending on how the group is set up, the facilitator himself or herself learns from others, and also others learn from them as well. And, everyone sees themselves as a contributor to the life of the meeting, or as well as to the life of the group. So although not everyone has a formal role of a facilitator or as a leader, but the small group experience allows them to be able to contribute some of their experiences as well as knowledge as well. And so finally, the other aspect is the fact that relationships are nurtured as well as formed. If we're to think about, some of our friends and family members that we are very close to, I'm sure an important feature that you probably say is the fact that, you've been able to spend time together intentionally and non-intentionally. Small groups create a setting beyond the Sunday gathering for people to be able to be intentional about their relationship. So what is one of the opportunities that I've identified in the digital world? As I've previously mentioned, I think with the digital world, there's a variety of contact points that we have with one another. Okay, so this is perhaps one of the best opportunities that I see with digital discipleship that can offer small groups. So members of a small group can do life together digitally and growing their discipleship through a number of ways. So one of the ways is the fact that you can attend the midweek meetings together through Zoom. You can nurture your relationships with one another through the regular posts that you have on WhatsApp. You can set each other Bible reading challenges through YouVersion Bible app. You can even send each other voice notes of prayers through WhatsApp as well. And I'm sure you can also identify other ways by which people can grow digitally. Over the summer, the London district, we asked about 10 people to share how they've been keeping their faith going. And one of the participants that interviewed or did the video for us said, she cried a lot because she was unable to do a lot of things that she loved. For her, she loved being outside. For her, church community was life. For her, she loved being around people. People for her meant a lot. And so she found herself praying and asking God to please help her. But she also said, she found a women's WhatsApp group as a lifeline. She found that the daily interactions on the app was encouraging to her faith, the fact that, she can share how she's feeling with her fellow members, and other members can also share the same experience with her, was something that really helped her in terms of getting through, the crisis and through the pandemic. So it'd be nice to hear from you as well. What are some of the opportunities that you think we can embrace through digital discipleship? I would say one of the pitfalls to avoid, which is an exclusive aspect of digital discipleship, is internet accessibility. We've all been able to participate in this webinar today because all of us have internet, either through our mobile phones or through our own broadband connection. However, this is not the story of everyone. You may have people in your local church that don't have access to the internet. In a report that was published last year, exploring the UK's digital divide, the number of adults which have never used the internet or have used the internet in the last 3 months, leading to the period in which the report was published, was about 10% of the UK adult population. And, in terms of numbers, that equates to about over 5 million adults. So can you just imagine 5 million adults haven't accessed the internet in the last 3 months, or they don't have internet access at all? And out of those 5 million, about over 65 people that are over 65 constitute about 2/3 of those people. And so one of my lecturers, because I study at Spurgeon's, I'm doing a theological degree at Spurgeon's, and she's had to say that, in their local church, because our mother has not been able to access the internet, what they've had to do was send her recorded video sermons on DVD for her to be able to, to play back. And so that's the practical reality of, what internet digital discipleship sort of excludes people from. And perhaps even if you've crossed the internet access limitation, there are some other challenges that we have. So some people have, data caps. And so if you're on a mobile contract, usually your mobile service provider would normally give you a particular quota, whether it's 10 gigabytes a month. And I do find that, a session like this in itself takes up a lot of data. And so this is one of the other pitfalls that would encourage us to be mindful of. And so in summary, how then can we, make the best use of both worlds? So I would probably say, if we can maximize the opportunities, so the different opportunities that you've typed up in the group chat, if we can maximize that, as well as, minimize the pitfall, and I think by doing that, we'll definitely be a winner. So yeah, I'm going to hand over now back to Emma, who's going to take us through the next section.
Thank you, Fola. And there's been a lot going on in chat, so thank you so much for that. Lots of people sharing their experiences. If you've got specific questions for Fola or for me or for Clive, who I'm going to speak with in just a moment, then do feel free to put them in the chat. I am monitoring the chat, and so I will pick up on your questions. And if you feel that we haven't responded to your question, feel free to write it again, and then it will appear at the top. So I've been using digital technologies for Bible and prayer, for reading the Bible, contemplating the Bible, and for praying for some time now. I'm going to confess at least some of my sins. I really struggle with regular prayer. I really struggle with regular Bible reading. And the excuse that I always give is that I've got a butterfly mind. So I find concentration difficult, and I'm not a very good routine person. But a few years ago, I started using the Northumbria community daily prayer. There are a number of these monastic communities, and I'm sure participants are familiar with others, that offer kind of regular daily prayer. The Northumbria community offers a Celtic daily office. And certainly when I was commuting into London to Methodist Church House, I found this really helpful for my own prayer life and for my own Bible reading, because I would literally sit on a commuter train on my smartphone and look at the daily office. And it was kind of dead time on the train. I couldn't really work on the train. There's not enough elbow room, but I could get out my phone. I could read through the daily office, daily prayers, in other words. Obviously, I wouldn't say the responsive bits out loud. I'd say them in my head. There'd be 3 short Bible readings, and there'd be a prompt to pray for others. And as someone who finds the distraction a real problem, funny enough, being in a situation where there were lots of other people around and lots of noise kind of helped me to focus. So I guess I've been thinking about digital technologies in discipleship for a while now. Now, Clive McKee has been able to join us today. Clive, do feel free to unmute yourself. I'm delighted to have you with us. And many of you will know of Clive, or certainly may know about Take Time meditations. Clive, can you say hi? Oh, I love the background.
All right.
So tell us a little bit about Take Time, maybe just in a sentence.
Take Time is a series of meditations which are online or available on CD, which, based on Ignatian spirituality, are very, very accessible for people with no faith background or for people with a faith background.
Fantastic. That was very brief. Thank you, Clive. And so it's a series of online meditations. You use the word Ignatian. Just tell us a little bit about Ignatian spirituality and what you mean by that.
Okay, so Ignatian spirituality uses your imagination to engage with a Bible passage, particularly a gospel passage, so that you are given a context, a place within Scripture where Jesus is present, preaching or teaching or healing. And because you are imagining yourself there, it's just easier to stay focused. And then the meditations construct within that setting, within that context, an opportunity for you to share with Jesus and to speak to him and to listen to him. And that can be and has been for many, many people a life-changing opportunity. So one 24-year-old just last week handed me a testimony, and she was saying that she's always believed in God, though she didn't attend church, pray, or even read the Bible. But having done Take Time now, just a couple of meditations, she said, not only do I believe in God, I have connected with God. And she said, I now read the Bible, I now pray, my life has changed, I'm in such a good place.
What a fantastic story. And that word connect and connection is so interesting. And interesting also that you give the example of a 24-year-old. We often hear, don't we, that Christianity in general in the UK and in Methodism in our own particular context has predominantly a lot of our church members, their average age will be they would generally be middle-aged and older. Obviously younger people are also finding Take Time helpful. Now I shared my struggles with prayer just now. I've done a couple of Take Time meditations. Clive, I met you at I think it was at the ECG for the first time last year, and you had like a set of headphones and you were offering the meditations. Now, if I remember right, there are different length meditations depending on how much time you've got.
That's right. So every meditation online is available as a 5-minute, a 10, a 15, or a 20-minute. So for people who are busy, you can do a meditation in 5 minutes. And if you've got time, you've got the whole 20 minutes. So every single meditation is in all 4 formats.
Okay, right. So it's something that can be sort of tailored to people's lifestyles, I guess, how much time they have.
Yeah.
Thinking about focus and people like me with butterfly minds, I mean, to do a 20-minute meditation, do I need to be really good at contemplation?
No, I think, for example, in mindfulness, you have to focus and concentrate on your sensations, what you can see, hear, and feel. But in Ignatian meditation, because it's based on story, once we all start listening to a story, we are engaged, we're in a safe place. We're children again, at home or in the class, and it's very easy to be drawn into that story. So I've done this with people with attention deficit problems all across the range, who don't believe they could possibly do a meditation, but have done so. And at Greenbelt, we had a little 5-year-old girl who had attention deficit problems. And she, while I spoke to her dad, She sat for 40 minutes doing one meditation after the other without moving at all. So it's that element of story which enables us to engage in a way that simply trying to focus and control ourselves is a much harder experience.
So that I'm hearing a number of different themes there then, Clive. So there's story, there's imagination, there's contemplation, but I mean, amazing to hear of such a young child, let alone a child with attention deficit disorder, to sit for that length of time. Clearly there was some kind of calming effect. I mean, I will say, so Clive, you narrate most of the meditations, or all the meditations at the moment, don't you? Yeah. And you have a very calming voice to listen to, which is great. Did I hear you say earlier that you offer them on CD as well for people that can't download them?
We do, yeah. So we have a small range for that. But during the because I'm been a Methodist minister for 25 years and a prison chaplain for 25 years, and in the prison, of course, we've got lockdown at the moment, and that's going to continue for quite a long time in the prison. So the women are locked in their cells 23 hours a day. So I've made take time meditations available on CDs for them. And for many of them, that's been an amazing journey. You know, they're locked in their cells. They don't have internet access, obviously, but many of them do have CD players. So can I just read you something from one of those prisoners who in the last few weeks has used Take Time?
Please, yeah.
In her cell. So she says, never before have I thought about discussing my issues with Jesus. I'm not a follower of God or Jesus. However, I'm pretty spiritual when it comes to angels and the pagan traditions. I was suffering daily with paranoia, stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, and lots of other significant mental health issues. Not only that, but I'd not long entered the female prison estate and had no idea how to get through such a horrific time in my life. Sometimes I would be physically paralyzed with fear on the floor of my cell. Then one day a tap came on my door from chaplaincy, which changed so much for me, not in terms of turning to Christianity, but in the form of Take Time meditations. I was desperate for any sort of help and was given a CD. I was, however, very dubious about talking to Jesus because I don't believe. When I played the CD, I was so shocked at how relaxed I'd become just from the sound of a voice guiding me. What came next, I was completely floored by. As I was guided through the story, I saw Jesus. He spoke to me in such a calm manner. It was like I was sat with my best friend. A huge sense of comfort filled me, and Jesus told me I was being looked after by the angel Gabriel. The angel appeared by my side in a bright light and wrapped his wings around me as an assurance that what Jesus was saying was true and accurate. I didn't want the meditation to end. It was as if something had been sorted out inside me. Now, whenever I feel I need a friend, I quickly pop in the CD and I'm taken to a place where there is no judgment, just calm, love, and support.
What a story.
Yeah.
Wonderful that you were able to share that with us today. And it strikes me, we sometimes make the mistake of separating evangelism and discipleship. I've made that mistake in the past, of thinking that evangelism is something you do to people who don't call themselves Christians, and then discipleship is what you do to them after. What you're describing, Clive, it doesn't really have that hard and fast distinction. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. So many, in addition to Take Time Online, there's about 40 churches so far that are running Take Time Together groups. And obviously before the lockdown, those were all physical groups, but many of those groups have become Zoom groups, so online Take Time Together groups. And it's within the group that someone who we train leads a meditation, and then they'll have a cup of tea or something, and then they will have a time of structured sharing, which is designed to be a level playing field. And within that, we frequently get people saying, group leaders coming back to us and saying, you know, we had someone in the group who said they've been a Christian all their lives, and that was the first time they've encountered Jesus. So we've had so many of those conversations where people, of course, they've been Christians, but they've encountered Jesus on a new level. And as I said, from that 24-year-old, I thought what she said was great. Not only do I believe in God, I have connected with God. So wherever we are on our journey, for many, this is a very simple, accessible way of deepening their faith. And through the groups, you know, sharing that and encouraging one another, either online or in person.
Fantastic. I was going to ask you about take time together, and because I was aware that you described very much individuals using take time, but then there's that group dimension, and it's great to hear that people have been able to do that on Zoom.
Yeah.
I guess that brings me on to asking about the lockdown and discipleship in lockdown. And Follow and I have been talking about kind of what has been lost, but what has been found, and it strikes me that an approach like take time, it kind of, because of the digital platform, because you can download the recordings and so on, because you can do it via Zoom, it still works.
It does, and I've forgotten what the distinction is, because I was on a meeting the other day, and they were talking about religion online and online religion. I've forgotten which one is which, but one is where you have basically a church website, which is a notice board telling people what's going on. And then the other one is unrestricted interactivity. So take time is where you're facilitating people to encounter Jesus. So it's very, very interactive and real. And as you know, Jesus is incredible in the way that he meets people at their point of need. So that lady who was a pagan who believed in angels, to encounter Jesus was one thing, but when the angel Gabriel wrapped his wings around her, that clinched it. You know, there was nothing that I could have said, you know, as an evangelist that could ever have, you know, changed her life like that did. And you wouldn't recognize her now. She's a completely different person. And she said last week, she said, having seen him, I can never unsee him. You know, so that's a permanent change in her life. And she said, it's like having a best friend in my life now. So it's, the exciting thing is for people, quite a few atheists too, who take time to be not religious, you know, nothing of the religious stuff that normally puts them off is there. And they encounter him. And, you know, we have one lady who now comes to our Take Time Together group. She's part of that online. And she said she started doing Take Time online by herself. And said, and found that it completely transformed her because she had anxiety issues. And she said, I'm still an atheist, don't believe in God, don't believe in the resurrection, but it's just that I have an invisible friend called Jesus who walks with me every step of the way. And she said, the great thing about talking to Jesus is that you don't have to explain things because he already knows. And she said, I'll take an issue to him and I'll say to myself, I know what he's going to say, but he never says that. And then she said, Jesus has an authority that no one else has. And she said, I talked about a family issue. At the end of it, Jesus simply said to me, this is. And she said, and I was able to take that and think, oh, well, I just have to accept that. And she said, no one else has that authority. Jesus knows, so I can take that from him. And she said, as an atheist, no other faith could do this for me, because Jesus is uniquely compassionate and forgiving, and he is helping me to learn to love myself. As I say, she is now part of our group. So started online, now part of a group. And now she talks in the sharing sessions about giving thanks to God. And it's just incredible.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Clive. We're going to move into a break, but not really a break now. But I do hope, Clive, that you'll stay online with us and perhaps join in our conversation with Fola a little bit later on, because people might have questions for you specifically about Take Time. What I'm going to do now, folks, is to put 3 links in the chat and to give you all 20 minutes to go off on the internet and to try out 3 different forms of or ways of doing digital discipleship. There may well also be others that you're aware of, so do feel free to take the time to look at those. But I'm going to offer you 3 options. One of them is going to be Take Time, so taketime.org.uk, going in the chat now. And as Clive has told us, there are 5-minute versions, 10-minute, 15 and 20-minute. So you actually will have time to do a Take Time during that 20 minutes if you would like to. And I'd encourage you to try it. I've really found it very powerful myself. And obviously we've heard some wonderful stories of others' experiences. Ali Johnson, who's not been able to join us today because of his conference preparations, commends Andy Fishburn to us. Andy's a Methodist minister who has been using something he calls flipped preaching. And so the idea is that rather than preaching being used as kind of a way of the preacher pouring their knowledge or into us, Andy's been kind of providing input up front so that we bring learning to that preaching experience. I have a basic understanding of what he's talking about. Andy, I'm sure, will explain it much better. And so I'm going to put a YouTube link into the chat, which is an Andy Fishburn video, and it's 15 minutes long, so you will have a time to watch that if you would like to, in which he talks about flipped preaching, and he gives an example of it. Finally, I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable. I'm going to put a different YouTube link in, which will show you my experiments in digital evangelism. So along with a friend from the Baptist church that I attend, we've been doing some digital evangelism, taking an inquirer's course that we wrote ourselves and trying to translate it into the digital realm. And so it's each session is about half an hour long, so you won't have time to watch the whole thing. But the link I've given you, you could watch a bit of it if you're interested to see the format. And we've been finding people have been interacting, posting questions, and then we've been using the second half of the time to react live to people's questions. If you skip to halfway through the link that I've sent you, then you'll see that kind of question time, as it were. So 3 examples there for you to look at. If you have any trouble accessing any of that, do please pop it in the chat. The meeting will still stay as we are, but I'd encourage you all to go off digitally, explore those options, and we'll come back together at 1:10. So 1:10, we'll come back together, and at that point, I'm going to invite Fola and Clive to have a conversation with me, responding to your comments and your questions, and continuing to explore this question of how do people learn, what does digital discipleship look like. So enjoy your explorations, folks, and we'll see you at 1:10. Thank you for pointing out I haven't actually put my link in yet. I'm putting it in right now. Freudian slip, perhaps. I'm obviously nervous. There we go. David, could I ask you to just pause the recording for a moment? Thanks so much. Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed the last 20 minutes. I've had some great messages in chat, both to me and to everybody. I know that people have enjoyed themselves, so that's great. We're going to consider some of your questions and your comments now. I have been making a note of questions and comments in the chat, so we'll start with the ones that have already been posted, but there's plenty of time. We've got 20 minutes for further exploration with Fola and Clive. Few questions for Clive. Lots of people clearly really fascinated to hear about Take Time. So Clive and Fola, if you could unmute yourselves, that's great, and then we'll be able to see you when you respond and hear you. So very simple question, Clive. Can you ask Alexa to play Take Time? Do you know if that works? I'm not hearing you, Clive. That's strange. I'm wondering why. You don't seem to be muted.
Is that better?
Oh, that's much better. There we go.
I was saving my battery.
Good plan.
Yeah, somebody here might know the answer to that. I have a sneaky feeling that you have to subscribe to get a direct link from Alexa. So say somebody else might know, but I haven't tried that.
Okay, so by subscribe, do you mean that there's a fee, or do you just mean subscribe?
I think that Take Time would have to subscribe.
I beg your pardon. Got it.
So that Alexa, is conscious of that link.
Yes.
But even if it took you to the website, you then have got to choose a meditation.
Right.
160, and then choose which length you want. So,
sure.
Yeah.
But on that subject, I know that you've got plans. I mean, I know lockdown has thrown out a lot of our plans, but your hope is to upgrade the app. Is that right? You've got some exciting plans there. We
have, yeah. Unfortunately, we've been hit like everyone else who was in the connectional funding round. So we had been told that we would have got the grant that would have enabled us to develop this super cross-platform product. Sadly, the whole funding round and everybody who was trying for funding has not got anything for that. So we're knocked back a bit on that, but that is our intention, and we will get there. So that will be a product that will be more interactive. It will enable us to give push notifications. It will give a much better user experience, and it will be comparable with apps like Headspace and Calm. To be a market-leading app. The app we have at the moment is a really, really cheap way of getting into the app market. So all you can do is just whiz through the list and play what you want. So basically, that's what you need. But in terms of being competitive with others, what we will have will be much, much better. But because of the funding situation, that's knocked us back a little. We will get there.
I'm sure you will. Sorry to hear about the funding. Sadly, that's the reality of the situation that we're in, but there's already that great resource up there. And I know that one of our team has already been on and tried Take Time and messaged me to say how good it was. So thank you so much. A couple of other questions specifically for you, Clive. Have you used Take Time with homeless people who are in a homeless hostel? Are you aware of anyone using it in that context?
Okay, so so there's a church in Aberdeen, Crown Terrace, and if I got that right. Anyway, they have a weekly open house meal for the homeless, and they've been doing that for a long time. And they've ended that with a sort of a prologue, or an epilogue rather. And what they've decided, having discovered Take Time, they realized that this works really well. And apparently the men said, we need longer because we want to talk about this. We don't want just to hear something and go home. We want to talk about this afterwards. So that's what I know about. And in terms of the people who you are likely to be dealing with, in a homeless or drug rehabilitation centre. Many of those are the people that I deal with one-to-one in the prison, with drug problems, homelessness problems. And as I say, whereas many types of meditation require a level of concentration, because that's a particular issue for a lot of them. Take time, just as somebody said to me the other day, take time reaches the parts that other meditations don't reach.
Excellent, excellent. Sally asks, is Take Time group leader training available online? Clearly she's excited to sign up straight away.
Well, it wasn't, but when the lockdown happened, we realized we couldn't get out there and travel around the country and lead groups to do the training. So we have actually now, that's what we've been doing all through lockdown, is putting the course online. So we beta tested it last week. This week are our first lot of actual students who are training to be Take Time practitioners online. So yes, it's online as of this moment. So if you're interested in doing that, just get in touch with us through the website, info@taketime.org.uk.
Great, thank you, Clive. So some more general questions. Feel free to chip in as well. Nigel asks, how can we go beyond simply transfer to translate and transform? So some of the digital discipleship that we've been doing is transferring what we normally do into the online space. Have you any thoughts about that? Putting you on the spot here. It's a problem with being on the panel.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of transferring to translate, I would say if we're able to encourage people to use whatever materials has been put online for themselves, I think sometimes that's where the transformation takes place. So if I was just to take a very basic analogy of teaching someone in the school context, some of the places in which the real learning takes place is when they now practice things for themselves in their own personal space. And if I'm to just borrow that analogy very briefly, I would also say that probably applies online as well, where people are able to take whatever is being made available digitally in their own space. So for example, the Bible app has different reading plans. If they were able to take that and just apply for themselves, that would definitely lead into some form of transformation.
Thank you. Yeah, there's been quite a range, haven't there, of digital discipleship techniques that have resources that have been tried, and people have been putting all sorts of links in the chat. So thank you for that. Live streaming is an interesting one. There's a great PDF ebook that's just freely available, edited by Heidi Campbell. It's written by academics. But I would say it's perfectly readable for those of us that aren't academics that study digital church. Lots of very short articles. I'll post a link in the chat for people who are interested. And there are lots of examples of digital discipleship that's been tried. Live streaming is kind of mentioned as, well, live streaming can be used as just, well, we normally do a service where the minister stands at the front and leads, or a lay preacher, worship leader. So we're just going to live stream that. So that can be just a simple transfer. Let's do it in the normal way and transfer it online. But I think we've already started to explore, haven't we, that live streaming can be used in other ways too. For example, encouraging comments from people, encouraging people to like and post comments, creates more participation. So that's perhaps beginning to translate a church service into the digital realm. A couple of people wrote a while back about comments. So Lydia says, initially people were making comments on her live stream, but the comments started to tail off and she'd like to get them back. Paul commented that some ministers have been a bit wary about comments. I guess if a minister or a lay preacher, they're used to delivering the sermon and then everyone sits there politely, perhaps to encourage comments makes them a bit nervous. Clive, follower, have either of you kind of been involved in that, in the commenting, other than, in that more kind of discursive kind of way?
You mean getting comments back in an interactive way?
Yes, yeah.
Not in Take Time. No, when I've been involved in Facebook Live services, then yes, in that way, but not with Take Time. And we have So where we have an online Zoom group in Take Time, you have the experience, and then you're in a structured setting where you can share. And it has to be a safe place. So you can't just have comments coming in from that could be anything if people have just shared as a group together. So you would have to moderate something. So in terms of how Take Time works, it's for people who want to share, having a completely safe space is a really important part of that sharing. So that particular aspect doesn't work for us. It works very well for other things, but not for us.
It's interesting. I mean, and we've had comments about GDPR as well, and of course, safeguarding can be an issue. So I know some people have wanted to use Zoom more, for example, with the youth group, or with other vulnerable people, but have had to think through how they create that safe space. I mean, with these webinars, the difficulty we had at the beginning, and sorry folks who were waiting around in the waiting room for some time, the difficulty we had was we've had to change the password each time because we were concerned about Zoom bombing. That if someone has a Zoom link, they can get in, they can put inappropriate images up on their screen. So there's been a learning curve there in terms of having to lock it down, figure out the Zoom settings and so on. It's a challenge to get around in terms of keeping people safe. There's been comments about should we continue digital church for unaffiliated people beyond lockdown? That's Jeremy's question. And Holly asks, how about using social media to reach unaffiliated people? So thinking about churches potentially coming back to normal, coming back to meeting face to face at some point. To what extent should we be continuing all the digital stuff we've been doing?
I would definitely say absolutely. We should definitely continue the digital broadcast post the lockdown, and for a variety of reasons. So there's a benefit to existing members. So sometimes your own members are unable to actually be in the physical service because of work, because of illness, because of other reasons. And so being able to give them that opportunity to connect with, let's say, whatever programs you have outside of a physical building sort of helps them. And I suppose for people that are not affiliated to the church, it gives them that experience to at least taste and see what the church is always about. And so for some people that have social anxiety, in the same way a lot of us have a website, by going to a website, you get a sense of an organization, whether you want to be part of them or not. I think having your services available online gives people that opportunity to test the waters without commitment. And so once they know that actually I feel comfortable in this space, then you probably would see them come in physically. So I would definitely say we shouldn't limit digital broadcast just to the lockdown. It's something that we should definitely consider post the lockdown.
Thank you. And Clive, obviously Take Time, the digital element is going strong. It's a strong part of what you do. So that's not going to be something that stops. How does social media work in terms of Take Time? Is that something you use much to promote what you're doing?
Yes, but I think we're very much aware. In a thing I did last week on this, they were talking about digital natives, who really get it all and it's in their blood, and digital immigrants. And I'm definitely a digital immigrant, so I do a bit. So we every time we put a post on Facebook on Take Time, we put something out on Facebook and on Twitter. And during the lockdown, we've been doing a Sunday morning live Take Time broadcast as well. I'm doing that on Facebook and Twitter. But I think there's a lot out there in terms of interactivity that we're not geared up for. A lot that we could do that we haven't got the skills to do yet. But there's only so much you can do in the day, isn't there? So one thing at a time.
Absolutely. So thank you. We've just been prompted. I didn't catch who it was that said it in the chat, but of course we're not just thinking about unaffiliated people, but others who can be excluded from church, perhaps unintentionally. So there's a justice element. So someone posed a question about disabled people, and Follow You talks about nursing mothers, for example, people who might struggle to get to church, to get to a home group, perhaps in the evening. There's also the issue of internet accessibility and some not having access to broadband, and that's a justice issue. So there are a number of kind of justice issues here, aren't there, in terms of inclusion. There's the missional imperative of welcoming people who don't currently attend church services in person, but might be interested in a digital service. But there's also that justice angle of including those who might struggle to get to a physical service. Other questions and other comments? We've had lots going on in the chat. So thank you very much for all your engagement. Sharon says, what about a both and model? So rather than thinking about either we do physical church or we do digital church, doesn't it make sense to continue using both? I mean, what might that look like? Follow or Clive, either of you, feel free to chip in. What might it look like to have a mixture of digital church and physical church at the point when we're able to offer that?
So I think that's just about looking at what works particularly well online, and we're only, we're learning that. Rather than simply putting what we normally do online, it's about discovering where it can be effectively interactive, where it's reaching beyond the normal listeners and viewers, and building on that. So I think it needs to be an ongoing mixed economy, and we need each other. Church needs a digital presence, a real interactive digital presence, and that needs church. We're very conscious that any Take Time Together group needs to be sponsored by a Christian organization. So we need each other. The digital needs the physical church congregation and its prayers and its support and its groundedness, and they need the digital presence.
Just to add to that, I'll also say the nature of the activity can also determine whether it should be had in person or digitally. So if it's a basic information session that only takes about an hour, then perhaps communicating that digitally might work. However, if it's a church meeting where you're required to hear people's voices, as well as to be able to hear people's emotions, then being able to have a meeting in the physical space allows people to not just be heard over the internet, but also allows their emotions to be communicated as well in person. So to some extent, the nature of the activity would require as well whether we should have an event online or versus having the event physically.
Thank you both. There's a few people raising the issue of, isn't this going to involve a lot of work? What about the tech skills that are needed? I mean, do you think digital church needs to be really high tech and really slick to be done well? And do you think it needs to take a lot of time?
I think that it would be better for a smaller group with the skills and with the resources to work on behalf of the church than for every church to attempt to do something spectacular. Does that make sense? So some people have got the skills, and I think it would be better to have fewer that do a good job than many that don't do such a good job.
Absolutely, I agree with that. If a local church can afford to have volunteers or paid staff to operate the cameras, broadcast it, definitely. But I do remember when I went to a revival service at St. Mark's, and I do remember seeing one of the members using their phones to broadcast the service on Facebook. And I thought that's quite innovative that, they're making the best use of what they have. And so it's always nice to have something that is very slick, but I'm also mindful that not every church has that ability to provide something slick, and therefore, being able to use what you have and make a progress based on what you have sometimes is a good outcome as well.
Thank you all so much. It's 1:30 and it's just about time for us to finish. Just to say, I've put the link to Heidi Campbell's ebook about digital church in the chat. So it's a free download. Sharon, thank you for pointing out to us that D Church has been running for years now, doing online church. And one of the things that Heidi explores in the ebook that you can download is the fact that actually lots of us have suddenly come online, and the digital church that was already there is saying, well, hey guys, we've been doing this for years, why don't you listen to us? So some of that is explored in this ebook. I would highly recommend it. As I say, I've already confessed my butterfly mind, but I found it was a good read. It's lots of very short articles, so I'd commend it to you. My favourite article in that book is by a minister in a very small a village of less than 2,000 people in rural Michigan. And he talks about recording fireside chats, as he calls them, on a smartphone and live streaming them to Facebook. So really, really basic technology. But it's really interesting to read about why he does it and what he's trying to achieve there. So I'd like to thank Fola from the London district, to thank Clive from Take Time. Thank you both for being with us. I've really enjoyed the conversation we've had today, and I've enjoyed everyone's comments in the chat. A recording of this webinar will be available soon. Please be a little bit patient, because our wonderful tech people in communications are very, very busy with conference at the moment. So there may be a delay in getting those recordings up, but there will be a recording available for you. I haven't mentioned David Harmer. David, our wonderful administrator on the Evangelism and Growth team. You've been seeing his face pop up. David's been leading us through today, letting you in all into the meeting and recording us. So thanks very much to David. Do please join us for our upcoming webinars. I'm going to share, I'll try and share my screen and show you what's coming up. Our Mission Beyond Lockdown series, www.methodist.org.uk/mission-beyond-lockdown. The links should all now work. I've learned how to drive Eventbrite properly, so you can see there the Zoom link for all of the webinars. It's the same for every webinar, but the password is changed. When you register on Eventbrite, you should be able to see the password on the event page. But if you have any problems, I set up an autoresponder on my email on the day. So if you email me, you'll get the password emailed straight back to you. So the next webinar is our conference Fringe events on Monday, the 29th of June. Everyone in Evangelist, even you, and we're going to be joined by the Reverend Dr. Elaine Heath, zooming to us from the United States, Dr. Krish Kandaya from the UK, and our very own Thelma Comey, our youth president, and my boss, Trey Hall, our director of Evangelism and Growth. So do join us for that, and do register at the link that hopefully you can see on the screen now. On the 6th of July, we'll be considering anti-racism in mission, committing to anti-racism in our mission. That's an evening webinar, 7 o'clock on Monday, the 6th of July. 2 o'clock Friday, the 10th of July. So what now? The church comes out of lockdown. And so we have a number of folks from the district missioner community and the Learning Network, along with myself. We're going to be thinking about what next. And mission planning beyond lockdown on the 16th of July will be specifically considering the issue of writing a mission plan, discerning and writing it at this time when everything has changed. So do sign up. Great to see you there. But for now, have a great afternoon. Thank you so much, fellas.